A murder that has become one of the most discussed crime cases of recent times is that of David Anthony Burke, who went by the stage name David. David was at the peak of his career. He dropped a high-charting debut album, he had millions of social media followers, and was significantly wealthy for a man only 20 years old. However, in September of 2025, detectives discovered the body of a 14-year-old girl that had been missing for months, Celeste Rivas Hernandez, in the trunk of his Tesla.
Alright, so y'all listen, squad. We finna be getting down to the psychology of David, man. You know what I'm saying? The upbringing, what turned him this way. You know what I'm saying? We finna be seeing what was his upbringing was. Cause you know, bro, how you was raised, bro, and how you came up in the household matters, bro. Now this gonna be like a little documentary on his life, on his upbringing. You know what I'm saying? And I just thought it was interesting because I'm trying to think, what's wrong with this nigga? You know what I'm saying? What was wrong with David? What kind of background he come on? You know what I'm saying? He you know what I'm saying? What type of background he grew up on? You know what I'm saying? And try to get to the psychology and what went wrong in his life and what could have, you know, made him do this. Even though I'm pretty sure the guess and the excuse is not enough for what he did to this little girl, man. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy the way he did. But I just want to know, and I just thought it was interesting and to see what the upbringing is very important, man. How you was raised as a kid and as a child is very important. So I thought it interesting. We react to it. Now this motherfucker finna be long. I may not react to the whole thing. This thing like 50-something minutes, bro. But you know what I'm saying? I may not finish the whole thing, but we gonna try our best to get through it, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Let's get it.
Dismembered and abandoned. And for months, people debated on whether they believed that this innocent-looking, clean-shaven young man with a melodic voice could do the things he'd been accused of. But now that David has been arrested for murder, and the prosecution have documented their evidence, the likelihood that this was some sort of setup has been significantly reduced. It became evidenced that David had a physical relationship with Celeste while she was still a child. And when they broke up and she allegedly threatened to expose the relationship to ruin his career, the prosecution believed he took matters into his own hands to protect what he'd built. But when you add the context that he made music constantly that included themes of blood, violence, and a romance that ends in tragedy, it's caused a lot of people to suspect that this outcome was something David always wanted. However, I'm not here to discuss theory and conspiracy. I'm here to clinically answer two main overarching questions. How did David's life engineer him to become someone capable of potentially murdering and dismembering a child? And if he did, then what mental mechanisms allowed him to carry on with life after the fact, knowing the body of the girl he was once intimate with was decomposing in his car? It's easy to just label him as pure evil and move on, but as a student of psychology, I find it crucial that we understand what happened to him in childhood, what were the warning signs, and figure out the why that surely exists in this story. There's a lot of questions I've seen online that I think I have the ability to answer by the end of this video. Answers that will give you a genuine understanding into the mind and psychology of David Anthony Burke.
I played it for her in the car. She was like, David, this song is too violent. You're talking about killing people? Your music? No, not my son. And I was like, wait, I might be onto something.
Let's start from the beginning. So, you're a New Yorker.
New Yorker, Queens, New York.
What are your parents like? Are they musicians?
Not at all. My dad is a litigator for a law firm. My mother was a teacher. She doesn't do it anymore, but she does notary now.
David Anthony Burke was born in Queens, New York, to Colleen and Dawood Burke, two Christian parents that seemingly would give him a tough and controlled upbringing.
Everything we played in the house, music-wise, was just Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, gospel music, like classical stuff, instrumentals only. Like, we didn't listen to any other music. There was no, like, Lady Gaga and all the popular artists everybody was listening to. We never could listen to that because my parents just wouldn't let us. It was just, like, straight classical stuff.
It was literally nothing. It was all gospel and, like, classical, Mozart, Bach, like, all that kind of stuff. Because my parents wanted me to be really smart. They never, like, talked about college or anything like that, but they always wanted me to be very intellectual, very put together, have an idea of what I'm doing, but they never, like, listened to music like that at all.
Trying to control what your kids listen to and the content they consume isn't necessarily harmful in and of itself. But if a kid is going to school and has no level of cultural relatability, it can cause feelings of being excluded, which in turn affects his socialization. If everyone got to access music and it became a point of discussion he couldn't involve himself in, it might have led to feelings of envy. And instead of David accepting this, he tried to find a way around it.
did your parents put sort of a cap on what you could and couldn't listen to in the
Nah, I was
house?
sneaking
It wasn't
around.
like that.
I had this little iPod. I used to sneak. I got it with me right now too. I still got these. I used to sneak around with the
my
iPod
God.
Touch. I used to sneak around with the iPod Touch and download things off iTunes and stuff like that.
The sneaking around his parents like this is consistent with reactance theory, proposed by Jack Brem in 1966. When perceived behavioral freedom is restricted, individuals are motivated to reclaim it. In these situations, the forbidden fruit, which for David would have been music, becomes more desirable, and the individual tries to acquire it by any means.
That's the thing. You know, I had friends that was very like, you know, they had like, if they had a like we went to school with a lot of people that was very strict, man. I don't agree with that to a certain extent, bro. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just like, bro, once you tell somebody not to do something or tell a kid, and you know, they just thought they was doing the right thing, but most of the people that was raised strict, them be the ones that be furious out. You know what I'm saying? Because like it's like you rejecting them already from it. Let them get the feel of it. Let them see what they kind of like. You know what I mean? Because once you close them off on a lot of stuff, bro, they gonna be curious to want to know what it's about. You know what I'm saying? I kind of look at it the way like people say, man, what would you tell your daughter what type of guy she would date? Would you just be real strict? I wouldn't say nothing to her. I wouldn't tell her, don't go, you better not date, don't street dude or no thug guy, which I don't want her dating that type of guy. I'm not gonna tell her that. No, let it exude off me. I'm gonna let her look at how I'm living, and when she need to see it in me what type of guy she needs to be with. But you better not tell your daughter or whoever what she better not do and who she better not date, bro. She's gonna go, guess what she's gonna do? The opposite of that. She's gonna go see what it's about. Because you telling her what she can't do. As a kid, you can't tell me what I can't and can't listen to. Now I'm curious on it. Why I can't listen to it. What it's about. Now I'm curious. You see, y'all see what I'm getting at with these right here? So,
even if it includes secrecy. Now, it's not the behavior itself that's necessarily significant, but the pattern it establishes. That authority is to be managed through concealment rather than confronted directly. This pattern would then reoccur later for his adult life.
yeah.
It didn't help David that his private school life in New York also consisted of bullying and teachers picking on him. So he had an uneasy time both at school and at home.
I hated New York at that point. Like,
Why did you
I didn't
hate
like
it?
my school. I was at a
'Cause
private
it's
school, and they treated me so horribly, dude.
Why?
It was insane. I don't know. All the teachers had it out for me. My little brother could testify to that too. Dude, they just had it out for me all the time. I don't know what it was. I would just do nothing to nobody, and the teachers would just pick on me and bully me for no reason, bro. I wanted to leave that place so bad.
And he got his wish as they moved to Houston, Texas, and he found it slightly better at his new school. But he was a kid that didn't really seem to find anything that stuck. His parents tried to get him into music, but it wasn't stimulating enough for him at that time.
She put me into piano lessons when I was 7, and then I quit that after a week. She was like, okay, I'm not gonna pay for it if you don't like it. Quit that. She put me in a church choir when I was 8. Quit that. And then I was in middle school band. When I was in 7th grade, I played the flute, and I quit that.
But he never developed into a conventionally social child. He describes himself as a people watcher rather than a member of a friend group, sitting apart in cafeteria settings and constructing fictional narratives around classmates that they were unaware of.
At school, before I was homeschooled, like middle school, elementary, I would look at these kids, like at cafeteria, at lunch was like my playground, like my brain's playground. Like there's so many different kids and they're all doing something different. I would just sit there and I'm a people watcher. I would just inspect them and like write about them and stuff like that. And I kind of brought these characters to life that were inspired by my classmates. So every time I would write like a short story, I'd have these different classmates in these stories and they would never know. It's like different names and everything, but they were inspired by my classmates.
This preference to observe people and create these stories was an early marker that he had a natural tendency to see people as subjects for analysis rather than reciprocal social partners.
Right.
Combined with his bullying in New York, it suggests he felt more inclined to exist on the edge of social bubbles rather than in them, present but not integrated, watching but not connecting. He says he began writing poetry in the 5th grade and pursued anime, gaming, and creative fiction from a young age.
Yeah.
Yeah, ever since I was young, I really just liked anime, gaming, and poetry. I remember reading my first manga when I was in 5th grade. Dragon Ball, Tokyo Ghoul, and see these fantasy characters with powers and all that. That weren't superheroes, and that inspired me to start writing and write my own stories about them.
But just in case his parents couldn't give him any more reason to resent them, they took him out of public school, the only place he was getting any sort of socialization, the place where he was letting his imagination run wild. and they instead placed him on an isolated homeschool curriculum.
Transitioning from public school to homeschool is tragic. The first 2 years was tragic.
Tragic?
I was asking to go back to school almost every day.
Yeah.
My brother too.
Was the decision to move from public schooling to homeschooling a difficult one?
It was, and it wasn't mine, it was my parents. So there's two different types of homeschooling in America. There's group homeschooling, where it's parents that don't want their kids to be in public school environments, but they still want them to be in social groups. So they have you have homeschool kids that meet once a week.
Why does he keep getting homeschooled? I mean, why did they take him out of the school? I mean, what are they doing? You know what I mean? And I noticed David said something about his teachers being, you know what I'm saying? It's just something weird about this. He weird. What's going on? Why does he keep getting homeschooled? What's the reason behind that? Why do you keep getting homeschooled for?
A specific place, and they play extracurricular activities like basketball and stuff like that, so they can socialize, and they do the work on paper. And then there's a second homeschooling where it's just strictly on computer. That's what I did.
They didn't let him enroll on the socialized model involving group meetings with peers, but a fully computer-based, home-based program with no structured peer contact whatsoever. From a developmental psychology standpoint, this is the most significant single environmental factor in his profile. Erikson's 8th stage model identifies adolescents, approximately 12 to 18 years old, as the critical period for identity versus role confusion.
Right.
The developmental task of forming a stable,
So 12,
coherent...
12, 18, you start to find your identity. You start to find where you fit in. You start getting pubic hair. You know what I'm saying? You start going to, you know what I'm saying, your older stages in life. I don't know why they keep kicking it. I mean, what?
Self through peer interaction, social experimentation, group belonging, and the feedback of others.
Right.
Removing a child from that process during its peak window doesn't simply slow development, it redirects it, and they don't develop normally.
Okay.
And the main damage that came from that cutoff was socializing. None of his peers stayed in contact with him following the transition, and he was all alone.
Yeah.
I thought I had a lot of friends in middle school, and then after being homeschooled, nobody's hitting me up, nobody's asking me where am I at? Why am I not coming to school today? It made me question, what is a real friend? And do I have any of those as well? Especially when I was transitioning from public school to homeschooling and nobody hit me up on Snapchat when I was streaking everybody. My Snap score was 250,000, bro.
And nobody hits you back?
Nobody, dude.
What the?
That's what I'm saying. Nobody, who, you not at school? Where'd you go, Dave? Nobody. Did I really have friends? And you start to question things.
Oh, totally.
About your everyday life. Who's really there for you at the end?
But now that I see this though, I mean, he's saying why don't nobody hit you up? Probably because you was fucking weird, dude. Maybe because you was doing weird shit. You know what I mean? Maybe you were just weird. I don't know. Maybe you were just weird. You know, I just ain't no. Listen, man. Everybody hit you. So listen. So. You went to school and David ain't nobody hitting you up. That ought to say something about you, maybe. You know what I'm saying? I could be wrong, but man, don't that kind of seem kind of off though, twin? Damn, ain't nobody hit you up. Probably because you was weird, bro. You know what I'm saying? And it seemed like with David, he's pointing the finger a little bit. You know what I mean? I understand he had some trials and tribulations growing up. Do you know what I mean? But it just seemed like he pointing the finger. You know what I mean? I don't know, man.
Homeschooling really takes a toll on a kid.
Isolation.
Yeah, and there's outlets I know I made a couple friends now that were homeschooled, but they had these groups that they would go to bi-weekly and just to socialize, but I didn't have that.
David would start to feel a growing disconnect between himself and his age mates.
Yeah.
And an acute awareness of experiences that he was excluded from.
Yeah.
I've gone through his TikTok, and this was clearly what hit him hardest. He was emotional seeing homeschool proposals. He has another post titled, What It Felt Like to Be a Homeschool Teen, and I won't play the audio for copyright reasons, but the lyrics go, everybody's falling in love and I'm falling behind, as he visibly shows his frustration at that fact. He missed out on having high school relationships, but had to watch everyone else get to have one through Snapchat. His former peers got to post relationship quotes and pictures with their partner, whilst he stayed at home, unable to do anything but watch. As the caption says, homeschool and being on social media 24/7 was not a good mix. In another post, he says his superpower is never being able to express my feelings properly because I was homeschooled and had no social life for 5 years. And on another, he says, I was homeschooled all my life. I never got to experience any school dances. When adolescents are denied normal peer socialization, the need for connection and belonging doesn't disappear. It finds alternative channels. In David's case, that channel was the internet, specifically Fortnite, YouTube, Discord, TikTok, and eventually music.
He should have been
During his
outsourced that 5 years. Look at him. You can tell there's something wrong with him, David. This boy been closed in all his goddamn life. That's what, you know what I'm saying? Even though that's not an excuse for what he, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying. This boy been closed in.
David describes Fortnite as his primary social environment. He engaged in squad fields, which is where you're allowed to join games with strangers and talk to them if you have a headset and mic. And he allowed people to vent their personal problems to him.
Especially being homeschooled, not having a social life, right? So I'm on the game, I'm talking to all these random people, and they're talking to me about their life problems, you know, using video games to escape the real world as much as I am, and then living my life vicariously through them and like writing songs about their lives.
Yeah.
I would go on Discord and I would go on Fortnite and I would go on like squad fills and I just let people talk to me and just tell me about their lives. Cause like most of these people that play video games the same way I do, they're going to it as an escape. So I was just being an open door and an open outlet for like my peers and my friends to kind of just like vent to me about different things in their like personal lives and stuff like that.
And I'm like 15, 14 at this time, so I don't know how to like be a therapist, right? But it's like I'm taking this information and all these different people talking to me about different like problems and situations. I'm like, wow, this is really what humans are like. Like, these are humans.
The fact he says, wow, so this is what humans are like. These are humans. Tells me that this was the only way David was understanding human psychology at that time.
That's crazy.
This is a clinically unusual developmental
through playing games. Through playing a game. He needs to be, listen, bro, it's already in a person's nature to be interact with, you know, have social interactions, bro. That's why I say I don't agree with it's good to be alone, bro, but not like too lonely. You need to socialize, bro. You need to talk to people. You know, I don't believe in all this being alone for the rest of your life and not having no, you know, and listen, I know some crazy people out there sometimes, bro. There are points in your life where you do need to be isolated. I'm not fully against that. But what I will say is you don't need to, especially when you're younger and in your teen, 12 to 18, you're trying to find your identity when you fit in that. You can't be closed in all your goddamn life, playing the game, socializing with people on the game. That's not real life. You're not, you don't, no, man. No. That's why this boy weird like this. Now, I'm not giving, like I said, that's not an excuse for why he did what he did. Maybe his parents thought they was doing the best that they could for him. This wasn't the best. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just thought they was helping him, and no.
Normally, an adolescent's model of human behavior is built through direct, embodied, reciprocal experience, like friendship, conflict, romantic experience, loss, etc.
Yeah.
But David built his model of human psychology through a parasocial and semi-anonymous listening role, absorbing other people's problems through a gaming headset. This produces a specific kind of social intelligence, highly observational, empathically competent on an intellectual level, but fundamentally disembodied. He understands humans like a researcher understands subjects, not as a participant understands his peers. And that's going to be significant when evaluating his later relational behavior. So he was chronically online, seemingly addicted to video games, but being home alone that much allowed him to stumble across much worse vices. Later, in his own Discord server, David disclosed a sustained pattern of consuming gore content beginning at approximately 14 years old, following the accidental exposure to a cartel execution video. Gore is real-world violence and injury, fully uncensored, including death and murder, and he was discovering that and watching it repeatedly at 14 years old. He describes a progression from initial shock response to habituation, saying, "It got to the point where I don't even cringe when I see it anymore," to then developing a dissociative response, claiming he started laughing at one point, but then escalated to deliberate, intentional use.
Weird.
I watch gore to disconnect the part of my brain that feels empathy to the wrong things. We have something called an amygdala, which generates the brain's threat and disgust response to violence. Repeated exposure to graphics.
Bro, that's why he wonder why nobody's hitting him up on Snapchat, bro. That's fucking weird, twin. You know what I'm saying? And he don't know this. You wanna know? He don't know. He wouldn't know it's weird, or if it's weird, he don't know this because hell, he not in a social environment. He's not in school. He's old school, so he probably don't know. He think this, he don't know. I feel like he was in school and they would have told him, bro, you're freaking weird. You know what I mean? He didn't even get that part because he's home.
It triggers habituation and desensitization. In simpler words, The threshold for what makes the brain want to cringe and look away rises because the stimulus is no longer threatening due to seeing it so much. What David describes in his Discord is consistent with this process in adolescence, whose prefrontal regulatory systems are still maturing and therefore less equipped to contextualize and contain the desensitizing effect. But what distinguishes David's disclosure from typical adolescent experimentation is that last part. He doesn't describe watching gore for entertainment or shock value. He describes it as an emotional engineering exercise, a deliberate attempt to modify his own empathic response. This level of intentionality about emotional desensitization in a 14-year-old is far from typical and represents a significant clinical signal. This would have been a major warning sign and red flag that David was gaining the ability to care less about human life. During that same isolated period,
He's not living in the real world, bro.
Developed an elaborate alter ego he called Itami, a Japanese word meaning pain.
I have this alter ego named Atami, which means pain in Japanese, and I'm heavily inspired by like anime and stuff like that. But that character that's in the music videos I make now was actually an idea that I had.
You wanna know what makes David so like more of a psychopath? Like it's so crazy how genuine and how he talks, and very intelligent guy. He talks and act like a normal guy. That's what makes it so scary, bro. Not knowing that this nigga here is a freaking monster. You know, he's just acting just like he's just a cool guy. You know, if you were to interact with this guy, you would think it's nothing, you know, nothing. He talks with a lot of sense. But he's weird.
Years before music even started, when I was writing my first comic book, and it was this detective that would solve his own crime. So he was the good guy by day, and then at night he'd kind of transform into this alter ego and then commit crimes he'd solved the morning of.
But Itami isn't this artistic, creative concept he's come up with. David described it in multiple interviews as a character he intended to develop into his own manga, one who was explicitly him, a detective who committed murders and then investigated them himself.
Big part of that manga was an evil version of me, an agent of chaos and kind of my alter ego. And there was an evil version of myself that would kind of come out at random moments, kind of like Fight Club with Tyler Durden. And he would commit the crimes that I would have to solve as the detective. So like when I was as the detective, I'd be like solving murders that I'm committing myself.
Understand that there's a difference between normal fantasy and what David's doing. We all might fantasize here and there, maybe about obtaining a certain level of wealth or driving a certain car or whatever you...
smashing a bunch of hoes. And yeah, man, that wasn't anything to think about. Man, seeing that fine girl in the classroom, that what I was fantasizing about. That fine girl in school with that ass on, I was fantasizing about that. Then driving a nice car, give some money, going to the strip club. With the feet, that what a nigga should have been thinking about. What you, Tommy, solving murders, killing somebody? What? Man, think about some man, we're trying to get some, I don't think I can say that on YouTube. I'm sorry, but y'all know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to, where the 304's at, man.
Care about. Escapist fantasy uses fictional scenarios to temporarily relieve stress and provide alternative experience. The psychological concept of fantasy elaboration, however, involves constructing increasingly detailed, immersive internal...
I don't know what type of fantasy David think. I don't know where his...
in which the individual places themselves, not a character, but themselves, and which begin to function as a parallel framework for understanding identity and relationships.
Right.
David explicitly inserted himself into this narrative. He is not the author of Itami. He's Itami's counterpart. They share an existence. He later described Itami as
the one that is weaving his way into my relationships and ruining them and inducing trauma and things like that.
This language suggests that the alter ego had become a psychological container for the parts of himself he wished to disown but had not eliminated. David transitioned into music accidentally in late 2021 after copyright strikes on his gaming content prompted his mother to suggest he create original music.
I started making music in December 2021. I used to be a Fortnite YouTuber, bro. It's so crazy. Only reason I started making music is because my videos got copyrighted. Because I was using Scissors music, Justin Bieber music, all that. And my mom was like, yo, if you're getting copyright strike, you're not making no money, make your own song. So I was like, bro, I could probably do that.
Because of his ability, I know he's able to play and do. So I said, just make your own music. And that was that.
So I kept doing it.
And then it kind of just became this thing where the music was getting more popular than the Fortnite videos. My SoundCloud numbers surpassed my Fortnite videos numbers. And it was out of here, bro.
He had no prior musical ambition. What he did have, though, was years of accumulated internal material. The Itami fantasy, the observational psychology built through online listening, the poetry he had written since 5th grade, and a set of emotional themes like isolation, romantic destruction, duality that had no other outlet. Music gave that internal world a public form. It also gave it a socially legitimate one. Dark themes that are wrapped in musical craft don't register to us listeners as warning signs. They register as artistry. The same content that might raise concern if it was in a journal or a private communication is celebrated when it has a compelling melody behind it. David's own statements confirm that his early music was not drawn from lived experience, but from imagination and preparation.
When I write music about heartbreak and the sad type of things, I write it not from experience, because I was a really homebody. I was homeschooled. Like, I didn't have much of a social outlet like that. I write it in like preparation. I feel like when you commit to love, you commit to devastation as well. I think it's a mixture of like trying to figure it out myself and then looking at other people's experiences. I mean, 'cause I've never experienced like true heartbreak either. So I write all these songs in preparation for it, so I'm not devastated, you know? So I know what to expect.
He describes writing about heartbreak in preparation, having never experienced it.
Yeah.
He states directly, "I love over-dramatized themes of romance because it would never be like this in real life."
I love over-dramatized themes.
That's the thing. I realize David think life is GTA, and it's not. No, my nigga, you can get in trouble for things, bro. You can't live. He's living life like it's on auto. Like, bro, no, bro, you can actually get in trouble. Do you know what I mean? I really think he's just living in La La Land.
That's because it would never be like this in
life is GTA. It's not that, bro. It's real life.
life, so it allows you to like have more room to play around.
The thematic content of his early catalogue in 2022, like Bleed Out in March, Dirty Secrets in May, Romantic Homicide in July, centers on romantic destruction, hiding dark secrets, killing a romantic partner, and feeling no remorse. Romantic Homicide's central lyric, which David explains in detail in a Genius interview, is constructed specifically around the active first person. Not just you died, but I killed you. He stresses the first person agency.
Which was in the back of my mind, but then you think that I'm gonna say you died, but I say I killed you. So it's not like the thought of her is gone by itself was something that she did, it was something that I decided to do. And I killed her in the back of my mind.
He also describes the back of my mind as the location of this act, which is precisely where he has told us that his fantasy lives. His mother's reaction to Romantic Homicide is very ironic, but also significant.
I showed it to my mother, and she was like, "That song's too violent and too sad. You're not releasing it. My son is not gonna be talking about killing people in music." And I was like, I'm gonna take that as a challenge, low-key. I played it for her in the car, and she was like, "David, this song is too violent. You're talking about killing people in your music? No, not my son." And I was like, wait, I might be onto something.
She identified something real in the content. He overrode her objection anyway and released it. And that song was the one that became his commercial breakthrough. The commercial success of Romantic Homicide
Situation just weird, bro.
is a pivotal moment in the psychology trajectory. David didn't receive any social correction for expressing violent romantic fantasy. He received validation, streams, a record deal with Interscope, and multi-million-dollar career momentum.
I get the first email from the labels. I showed them, I'm like, all right, my mom has to hear about this now. I was like, there's no way I can like sweep this under the rug. I'm getting really famous right now. And then I meet with Interscope, who I eventually signed with, and I meet on my team, Mogul Vision for Management, that I signed on management. And then at that point, it was just time to push the button.
From a behavioral reinforcement standpoint, this is near optimal conditioning. The behavior, which was externalizing dark fantasy through art, produced the outcome most desired by someone with his developmental history, which was belonging, recognition, status, and the experience of being known without truly being seen.
Right.
Because not only did he blow up in music, but that coincided with social media fame, like TikTok, where he got tons of engagement.
What grown man? This Hello Kitty. Get this off here, David. What is this? A grown man? I don't know no grown man who likes Hello Kitty. If that what you like, that what you like. Everything about this dude here is just weird as hell. Put your face on there, man.
But looking back on that, those fans were engaging with someone who wasn't even their true self and who never took the mask off.
I got me as the artist, David, D4vd, Itami, which is the antagonist. He was the blindfold. My gaming character is coming soon. He is like the one that's super tech savvy and stuff like that. And then my social media persona, which is also being built out as we speak. And that's the 4.
He constructed an entire identity architecture around himself with those 4 defined personas: David the artist, Tommy the antagonist, a gaming persona, and a social media persona, none of which were David Anthony Burke. The actual self was not among them. What researchers describe as identity diffusion, where the boundary between constructed persona and authentic self becomes genuinely unclear, appears to be happening here. The masks were not overlaid on a stable self, they may have become the primary mode of self-experience. So David from early on learned how to switch between characters. In private, he could be this antisocial kid with dark fantasies. In interviews, he could sound smart and sophisticated.
Yeah.
And on TikTok, he could do his best to be relatable and goofy to his audience.
Yeah.
That ability to switch became something that we now potentially know might have helped him deal with the consequences of his future actions. According to prosecution documents, David and Celeste Rivas Hernandez first made contact online in January 2022 when she was 11 years old and he was 16. This reportedly happened on Fortnite, which would be consistent with how David got his social interaction when he was homeschooled.
Yeah.
The prosecution documents confirm a physical relationship began in November 2023 when Celeste was 13 and David was 18. So they knew each other online for almost 2 years before ever becoming intimate. This is purely my opinion based on available context and evidence, but I don't believe David sought out Celeste in a predatory form, looking for a minor specifically because that's what physically attracted him.
Yeah.
The fact he was only 16 at the time and was being homeschooled makes it completely plausible that the relationship began as some kind of intense online companionship where he was just happy to talk to someone, with age not being one of his concerns.
Yeah.
I believe they started off as friends who confided in each other, made jokes, and wasn't started off in any inappropriate nature.
Yeah.
What changed it?
And I think since David had already left, see, he was homeschooled around in middle school. So this boy mind is still kind of in that setting. You know what I mean? He's been closed off in for 5 years. This is his first time, interacting with a child. So they kind of on the same level, if that makes sense. That's what I think. They kind of on the same level. You know what I mean? What she's talking about. Because, I don't know if he knew she was young, but I could tell the way somebody's talking, she may be a little girl. Like, how old are you? You know what I'm saying? If you're real young, bruh, you know what I mean? Like, no, I think I could pick up on it. Your maturity, the way you're talking. He don't know this though. He just talking because this is the only thing he's been doing all his life. You feel me? Like, I just think his mindset was already kind of boxed in. Like you could be a grown man in a child's still have like a child mind, if that makes sense. Like,
Question. The evidence that the prosecution are bringing forward documents a pattern that David was grooming Celeste in stages that got gradually more intense. The first thing he did was make her feel special. He released a romantic homicide music video on Celeste's birthday. He then recorded a song titled Celeste in December 2023, expressing deep personal obsession, and he continually maintained her presence in his Discord server. The song Celeste references the girl with my name tattooed on her chest, a detail that subsequently materialized in reality when Celeste had his name tattooed on her finger and shared it in the Discord server in July 2024. He also never publicly posted her on social media, but would post pictures where she's present but not identifiable, or captioning posts referencing having a girlfriend to show his fans he was in a relationship, which gave his romantic music credibility. Another thing he did was use financial control. Prosecution documents confirm that after Celeste's parents removed her phone from her in February 2024, David drove to Lake Elsinore where she lives and paid a classmate $1,000 to provide Celeste with a new phone he had purchased so that they could maintain contact. This was done after law enforcement had directly informed him that she was a 13-year-old runaway. Despite her parents and law enforcement trying to stop David from connecting with her, he chose to go around them anyway. He then isolated her from her family and support system. There's debate on whether Celeste had the best home life in the first place, but David definitely capitalized on that and took advantage of it.
He took advantage of it because, yes, he took advantage of her. He groomed her because she was a runaway already, so that was kind of up his alley. So he groomed her to what she wanted to be. That's why he said in one of his videos, he social trained her or something. He media trained her. You know what I'm saying? Because you could tell her something. Because why are you know what I'm saying? He's trying to hide something. Now, I know relationship, they hide, who they be with and stuff like that, man. But you can tell that this is a little girl, bro.
Throughout 2024, The prosecution documents confirm that Celeste spent significant time at David's Hollywood Hills residence, accompanied him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas, and was repeatedly reported missing by her family. This pattern of running away is consistent with successful grooming. The victim's primary attachment has been displaced towards the perpetrator. David had become the new safe place in her eyes, which is really sad to think about in hindsight. Another thing David desired was surveillance and control. It could be for humor purposes, so take it as context rather than fact. But in January 2024, after they'd started a physical relationship, he posted a TikTok with the text on the screen implying a partner telling him that she will swallow an AirTag so he gets to know her every move. It seems playful on the surface, but with the context we have, he's describing a desire for a constant location surveillance over a minor. On January 11th, 2024, David did a Twitch stream, but he had Celeste in full view of his audience, right there in plain sight. She was wearing a hoodie and glasses to perhaps conceal suggestions at her age, and they seemed to be doing a cooking stream.
Season it? It's already seasoned, but it's Alfredo.
I'm yet to find the full stream, but something gets said beforehand, and the comments start saying things like, "Pray for his career, chap. You're done for, bro. Nah, you going on the Epstein list. There's no escaping this, bro. Caught you in 4K. All messages that allude to the chat realizing that David is allegedly. David reads these comments out loud and questions Celeste. Are we done? To which Celeste says, we need to delete this.
Pray for his career, chat. Are we done? Are we
We need to delete this.
They say we need to delete
Can we delete all VODs? And
Look at she got the big glasses on, the hood. She's trying to make us look like she's older. She's a kid.
Delete the stream too. Can we delete everything? You done for, bro? Y'all are not done? Now you going to Epstein? Wait.
You see the instant panic in David because he's tried to keep this relationship a secret, and this was the closest he'd gotten to being exposed. The chat continues with David and Celeste Island trip and David Epstein flight list. But something else gets said, and David puts his hand firmly on Celeste's shoulder and says, I media trained you. To which she replies, no, you didn't.
Media trained?
I personally don't.
I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
He says that's controversial, and she questions him with something that almost exposed his secret to the world.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
He silenced the mic, see?
Really good.
Okay,
it's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah. Oh my. Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
She seemingly regrets saying it straight away, and David ends the stream.
Too late.
Of course, I have to preface that streaming clips get taken out of context.
Out the bag already, buddy.
The time. What we don't know is what was actually said beforehand, and the chat could have been referencing something completely different. But what we do know is that David was making attempts to media train Celeste. In his own words, due to him understanding what he was doing was wrong, this is an attempt at power control, because by giving her instructions on how to act, she's molded to become more obedient. It's crazy that this Twitch stream...
see, she's 13, 14, see, around that, I don't think he find nothing wrong with this, because he, like I said, he got kicked out at the school, in middle school, at that type age. So they get along really well. Because he, you know what I'm saying? That's the part of an age, that's the age where, you know, he got kicked out of homeschool around that age. 13, 14. It's kind of like, you know, with R. Kelly. And his older sister had molested, I think did some things with him at a young age when he was younger. And that's why he liked young girls. Because he was a victim himself when he was younger. A family member touched him when he was younger. So he still has that mindset. He think that that's the right thing to do. It's the same thing with him. He never went to high school. He never got nobody older. He probably don't know what that's like. He don't know what that's like.
Almost a mirror of what the prosecution are alleging David did to Celeste over a year later. When he was on the verge of getting exposed, he tells his mods to delete everything, to physically discard of the evidence so that no one can find out the truth. He did what he needed to maintain control over the narrative, and panics when there's a risk of the mask slipping. Prosecution documents state that Celeste and David broke up in November 2024, though text messages confirm a continued contact through to at least March 2025. The documented text exchanges describe Celeste growing distress at the nature of their relationship. She messaged, according to prosecution filings, all we do is have sex and just hang out, man. I want more than that for myself. If you notice, the prosecution frames this as evidence of David's manipulation.
I don't want to just have sex. The only thing we do is have sex and just hang out, man. I want more for myself. That's crazy, bro. I love that as a kid, bro. You know what I'm saying? I just think that's just wild, man. You know, man, when we was 14, 15, you're not supposed. She got to be at somebody her level. She's supposed to have a little boyfriend, and they texting, and you know they saying the things they think. You know the little fairy tale when you in love, boy. Boy, when you in love, when you young, you 14, 15. You know what I'm saying? You talking to your little girlfriend, you talking to your boyfriend. Y'all talking about when y'all get older, y'all gonna get married, and oh, but when I see you in the hallway, you gonna give me a kiss, or that, you know, your little first hug, your little first kiss. You know what I'm saying? She's supposed to be doing that with a guy that's in her school, that's 14, 13, like that. That's how they supposed to go. Not nobody that's grown and old like that, man. With that type of experience like that, filling her head up like that.
This is because of the context that is supposedly surrounding this message. The prosecution's argument is that David had deliberately led her to believe that they had some sort of future together.
Yeah.
That she was his girlfriend, his partner, someone he was building something with, specifically in order to maintain physical access to her and her silence. She was emotionally invested in a future I don't think he actually planned to give her. Now, before we proceed, I have to reiterate, because I know how soft the YouTube guidelines are when it comes to active cases and demonetization, but David is only alleged to have murdered Celeste Rivas Hernandez and has pleaded not guilty. So take what I say next as opinion, as rumors, as theory, but not fact, because his behavior over 2025, if not guilty of the murder, just looks like normal behavior. But that's also the problem if he is guilty, because only a psychopath could do what's been done to Celeste and go about life as normal. Exactly. On the night of April 22nd, 2025,
and he very much give that.
Prosecution documents describe a lengthy argument conducted over text messages. Celeste had become aware of David's relationships with other women.
Right.
Although they supposedly weren't in a relationship anymore, this triggered Celeste, and she threatened to expose their relationship publicly and destroy his music career. His debut studio album, Withered, was scheduled for release April 25th, 2025, so 3 days later. On top of that, he had a multi-million-dollar career, active endorsements, and a world tour booked. The prosecution alleges that at approximately 8:40 p.m. on April 23rd, 2025, David ordered an Uber to transport Celeste from her Lake Elsinore home to his Hollywood Hills residence. She arrived at approximately just after 10 p.m. The prosecution alleges that shortly after her arrival, David stabbed her multiple times and stood by while she bled out, making no attempt to call emergency services. At approximately 11:30 p.m., he drove north on the 101 freeway to Santa.
People kept getting on to me in the comments in my last video about the parents, but that's too damn late for a kid to be out, going out any damn where. I'm just putting it out there. That's too damn late. 8, 10 o'clock in the morning, a 13-year-old going out. That's just pitiful.
Recounting,
terrible.
Texting and calling Celeste's phone as he drove. A pattern the prosecution characterizes as a deliberate attempt at a cover story.
Right.
He returned home early on April 24th, went to a radio interview for the album, and attended the album release party later that evening. The prosecution then documents evidence of David's poor attempt at concealing the crime and dismembering her body, which he then left in the front trunk of his Tesla.
Burke placed her body in the inflatable pool he'd ordered to prevent her blood from spilling onto his garage floor, and used a chainsaw to cut off her limbs.
Wow. Surveillance footage confirms David drove his Tesla for the last time on July 29th, 2025, before parking it on Bluebird Avenue in Hollywood Hills and departing for his concert tour. And this is the alleged story we have so far on how David potentially murdered Celeste and then continued with life like nothing happened.
That's sad, bro.
The following analysis I'll give is based on if the evidence presented by the prosecution is factual and proven, and is just my opinion. But the first thing that I believe to be true is that David demonstrates a dark triad personality. The dark triad is a mix of 3 personality constructs: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, identified in psychological literature as co-occurring and collectively associated with manipulative, exploitative, and callous interpersonal behavior. And I believe all 3 appear relevant to David's documented behavioral profile. Narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is characterized by grandiosity, a persistent need for admiration, entitlement, and a lack of genuine empathy. Subclinical narcissistic traits, which don't meet the full diagnostic threshold but are clinically meaningful, are observable in David's behavior across multiple domains. The construction of an elaborate multi-persona identity architecture, the use of a child as a participant in his artistic and fantasy world, the apparent expectation that normal rules, including the laws, didn't apply to him, and the documented use of financial resources to purchase compliance from multiple parties, like Celeste's classmates and potentially others, rather than just accepting social or legal constraints. He continued pursuit of Celeste after direct law enforcement contact, despite being explicitly told
like
that
he paying a student off to give her the phone so he can stay in contact with her.
he was a 13-year-old runaway, which just demonstrates how important he thought he was. Narcissistic individuals frequently exhibit a belief that ordinary legal and social constraints are obstacles that apply to others, but not them. Machiavellianism refers to a strategic, manipulative orientation towards interpersonal relationships. In simpler terms, using others as instruments towards personal goals, maintaining multiple social presentations simultaneously, and planning several steps ahead in your devious plans. David's documented behavior across the 2022 to 2025 period is consistent with this profile. The staged disclosure of his relationship that was sufficient to lend his music credibility, but not enough to expose it, the financial management of witnesses, the claimed media training of a minor to manage his public perception, and the fake name he used on the Amazon purchases when trying to cover his murder trail. Psychopathy is characterized by reduced fear response, diminished empathy, shallow affect, and the capacity to engage in harmful behavior without the guilt and anxiety that normally regulates such behavior in normal individuals. What's actually happening in the brain is reduced amygdala reactivity, meaning the internal alarm system that makes violence psychologically hard to deal with is significantly reduced. David's deliberate desensitization program beginning at 14, his awareness of this process, saying, "I watch God to desensitize the part of my brain that feels empathy to the wrong things," and his ability, if the allegations are accurate, to attend a radio interview and album release party within hours of the alleged murder are all consistent with elevated psychopathic traits. The prosecution's timeline describes someone who moved through the alleged crime and its immediate aftermath in a goal-directed, organized manner without visible emotional disruption.
I like how he put that together. And it makes sense on how he can be able to just act normal, this and that. That's a psychopath, bro. And the fact that he was with her and they did all of those things that he did, and for him to go with life like this, like nothing has happened, which he knows something is wrong. Because if y'all had some sort of relationship that's like that, why you wasn't eager to find the little girl? Why you wasn't like, dang, where's Celeste at? You know what I mean? It's just like you just going on with life. You know what I mean?
Public function.
That's how you know it's something wrong with him.
Saw the murder and the cleanup as a task to get out the way.
Let's just say you didn't do it. But you know, so why you not curious to know where she, like y'all didn't share nothing, like y'all just don't know, like she's just a freaking a stranger to your life. You're not trying to see where she's at.
Major disturbance to his life. It's important to note that psychopathy exists on a continuum. High psychopathic traits do not predict violence on their own. They represent a reduction in the internal constraints that make violence improbable for most people. You can definitely have psychopathic traits and go through life without killing anyone. But if you had to, or if you believed you had to, it wouldn't be hard for you to mentally process. The best way I see fit to analyzing the rest of his psychology is by answering some common questions surrounding the case.
Right.
The first is, was David born with psychopathic traits, or did the environment shape him like this?
Yeah.
The evidence doesn't support a simple nature or nurture answer, and the research literature on psychopathy doesn't even need one. Studies on antisocial personality disorder, which is the more official diagnosis with traits similar to psychopathy, have found that genetic predisposition is a real factor, but is not determinative, meaning genes do play some part, but it needs more than that. What the developmental history suggests is that David likely had some dispositional features like his elevated sensation seeking, a reduced fear response, a natural tendency towards social observation over social participation that interacted with a profoundly adverse developmental environment.
Right.
The isolation he experienced in homeschooling removed the social components that normally regulate and redirect dark impulses in adolescence, such as peer feedback, mentorship, romantic experience within age-appropriate contexts, and the reality testing that comes from genuine reciprocal relationships.
He missed a big part of that, a part of his life, man. He was gonna be some type of weird anyway. You know what I mean?
Basically, when you're in school and you're weird, people are gonna tell you you're weird.
See, that's what I was saying at the beginning of the video. That's what I was just saying. If he was in school, they would have told him that he was freaking weird. That's what I was just saying.
And that's gonna cause you to not be weird. The gore consumption, the fantasy elaboration, and the emotional desensitization program didn't occur despite his isolation. They occurred, most likely, because of it.
Yeah.
Any genetic psychopathy predisposition might have stayed more muted in a more socially connected environment. But David was given 5 years of uninterrupted space in which to develop it without correction. The next question is, if many children experience homeschooling, many children watch gore, and many children watch anime, and they don't become violent, then why was David different? The answer is not any single factor, but the specific combination and timing of factors, and the absence of mitigating ones. 3 elements distinguish David's profile from the general population of adolescents who share some of his experiences. First, the duration and completeness of his social isolation was extreme. Not partial homeschooling with peer contact, but 5 years of near total isolation during the precise developmental window where identity and empathy are formed through reciprocal relationship. Fair enough if they let him go to some sports clubs and he got to meet people weekly, but he was completely alone. Second, his response to that isolation was not passive, but active, as he built an increasingly elaborate internal fantasy world in which violent romantic narratives were central, and he deliberately used that period to pursue desensitization by watching gore videos. Third, and perhaps most critically, nothing corrected the trajectory. There were no peer relationships to provide reality feedback. There were no teachers or mentors who intervened. When his dark material reached the public, it was celebrated.
And then he just keeps saying like all the teachers was bad to him. I don't believe that. Like I noticed he's talking about all my teachers were bad to me, this and that. Well, why were they? And I think that David may have been expelled from school, bro. Something he was doing in school, that's why he kept getting homeschooled. Cause why you keep getting kicked out? What are you doing in school? You know, everybody has a problem with teachers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But golly, bro, every teacher is bad. Everybody got something against you. What were you doing? That's why they tried to get the boy help. They probably thought that this was the way to, you know what I'm saying? This was the way to get him right. You know what I mean? And that was bad. That was bad.
Directly about a 13-year-old runaway, he found a way around their intervention.
Yeah.
The system of natural corrections that normally checks and redirects deviant development failed at every point. Another question is, with his fantasies and music content, did David always have a lust for murder, or did circumstance just cause him to kill in that moment?
Yeah.
Neither characterization is fully accurate. Despite how wild our minds like to run with conspiracy, evidence doesn't support a long-term conscious plan to murder Celeste. There's no indication he groomed her with killing in mind from the outset. What the evidence does support is a sustained internal world in which romantic relationships and fatal violence.
If he was like into this anime stuff and gore videos, I do think I don't think he is planning for to murder her, but at the same time, he wanted to know how it feel like to unalive somebody. I do think that, like, he wanted to know how it feel to unalive and kill somebody. Like, I think he likes that, you know.
Were thematically intertwined, in which he had deliberately engineered his own emotional desensitization to that violence, and in which he had repeatedly rehearsed through his music videos, through lyrics, fantasy, and alter ego construction, the psychological experience of killing a partner and feeling nothing. Whether or not he consciously intended to kill Celeste, he had spent years building the psychological infrastructure that made it executable. The prosecution's alleged motive that he was silencing a threat to his career is entirely plausible as a proximate trigger, but the proximate trigger ignited something that had been laid down over a long period of time. A person without that psychological infrastructure, confronted with the same threat, would not have had the same response. They might have offered to talk about things, maybe to pay her off, or something, but not murder. Not higher. Basically, if the same situation repeated itself with another girl like Celeste, David would just say, "It worked the first time, so I'll do it again." But I don't believe he'd go around his life trying to find people to murder. So, how do we summarize?
I don't know. I think what y'all think, chat? I think he would have, bro. I think he would have.
David Anthony Burke's trajectory is not the product of a single cause, and it doesn't follow the profile of someone who is always going to commit a violent crime. It follows the profile of someone whose dispositional characteristics were given an extreme developmental environment in which those characteristics were amplified, reinforced, and never corrected. The homeschooling decision at 13 was the rupture, not because it was inherently abusive, because it removed the entire social architecture within which deviant development is normally detected and corrected, and replaced it with 5 years of unstructured internet access and internal elaboration.
Right.
The resulting internal world saturated with violent
Didn't
romance.
have no social life for 5 years, bro. Now, I'm not giving this an excuse on why he did what he did. He's just a sick guy, and there's still no excuse for what he did to her, bro.
Deliberately desensitized emotions, and a constructed alter ego who committed murders, was then given a commercial platform that celebrated rather than challenged it. The relationship with Celeste Rivas Hernandez was built on the structural conditions his isolation had created, an online social infrastructure that gave him access to vulnerable people, a power dynamic he had never experienced in any other relational context, and a fantasy framework that had always positioned a romantic partner as someone he would end up killing. What the prosecution alleges is that when that relationship produced a threat to his survival, both professionally and financially, the psychological infrastructure necessary to respond violently was formed, and the psychological barriers that would have made most people unable to act on that response weren't. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. She was reported missing by her family multiple times. She had reached out to the one adult who was supposed to care for her, and was told that she was wanted, loved, and seen, or at least made to feel that way at one point in their relationship. The prosecution alleges that that same person who told her those things ordered the Uber that brought her to his door and stood by as she bled out on the floor of his Hollywood Hills home. The warning signs were there, in his music, in his Discord, in his fantasy constructs, in his own words, in interviews, given freely to journalists who heard them as art. The question this case raises, for parents, for platforms, for the music industry, and for the audiences who stream artists without reading what they're actually saying, is not why nobody saw it. It's why, when it was visible, it was so easy to look away.
You could tell there's something wrong with him, bro. You know what I'm saying? He needed some help. He talking about all the teachers was into it, you know, blaming it all on the teachers. You know, David is just a sick psychopath guy, bro. It's just that simple, man. And he needed some help. You know what I'm saying? This boy been closed in all his life, playing games, not being social. That's why I tell you kids, man, get off that goddamn game. I'm not confident in myself. I don't know how to talk to girls. Get outside, man. Get off that game all day, being closed in, watching these exclusive videos. You know, y'all know what I'm talking about. Being closed in all your goddamn life. That's the worst thing that happened to David. Now, I'm not, like I said, no excuse for what he did, but still, man. Y'all niggas gotta start getting outside, man. Talk to some girls. That's why y'all ain't got no confidence. You got to put yourself out there. You know, you gotta put yourself out there, man. Get outside. Get your feet wet, homie. You know, man, they thought they were doing this. But see, I think David was doing something in them schools, bruh. I think he was doing something in them schools. I think he got expelled or something he was doing to why they kept kicking him out. Why y'all keep homeschooling the boy? Let him be socialized with friends and stuff. That's what he should have been doing. But I think he was weird. That's why nobody hit him back up. See what the comments say. His parents taking him out of public school, giving him, unbridled access to the internet is crazy. Exactly. Rest in peace, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Nah, for real. He treated everyone like an NPC. Well, what the hell you expect? He's been playing the game all his life. He only know how to interact with people through social media. Being homeschooled and making it your own personality is crazy. Yeah. Childhood is crucial. It really is, bro. I tell people that every time. Your upbringing, how you was raised is very important. I agree with these people. He was jealous of Celeste's freedom, confident that he didn't have at her age. It's kind of crazy. He isolated of most of life, but he talks with full confidence and never looks social. You know, it seemed like both of their parents failed them. Not saying that they fully to blame, but Celeste family, L, David family kind of a L. I mean, they thought they was doing the right thing, but they should have had him in social environments, bro. He clearly did something abnormal for his parents to pull him out of school and move access to the country. Exactly. Believe me, I was just isolated. Believe me, I was just as isolated, if anything more, and I had no violent thoughts. Okay. Interesting. Celeste was a teen in an adult situation. Poor girl, no idea what danger she was in, threatened to expose him. Her being so young, she hadn't developed the skill yet. Yep, he literally created the situation monster. Yes, facts. she had to grow up so fast, man, and she was only a little girl. I agree, bro. It's so sad. She was only a little girl and a grown person, like the comment said. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be levels to this, bro. It's supposed to be levels. She's 12, 13, freaking living like a 20-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, no, she's supposed to be at home doing homework, calling her sneaking, trying to call her little boyfriend. You know what I mean? Do a little stuff. He's supposed to be averted. This and, you know what I mean? It's crazy, bro. Y'all get in the comments below. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. Till next time, y'all. We out, man.